The sky cracked open one morning, but not with thunder. It was a silence so deep, so unnatural, that even the wind seemed to hesitate. Then it appeared. A colossal shape, metallic, dark, and impossibly large, hovered above the Pacific Ocean, blotting out the sun like a second eclipse. Its surface shimmered with alien glyphs that writhed and shifted as though alive, reflecting the clouds and waves below. People stopped. Cars skidded to a halt, planes circled aimlessly, and news networks scrambled live feeds. Governments issued statements that sounded hollow even as they were broadcast, because no one knew how to respond to a presence that wasn't threatening, yet wasn't friendly either. The object didn't move toward Earth. It simply hovered, like a giant observant eye, scanning every inch of the planet with a cold, precise intelligence. Most of humanity panicked, but Alex Mercer wasn't most people. He was a young mathematician, slightly disheveled, with a mind that found patterns in chaos. While neighbors screamed and politicians barked orders, Alex noticed something others didn't. The glyphs weren't random. They pulsed in rhythmic sequences, almost like a heartbeat, scanning and recording. The probe wasn't just here, it was testing, calculating, learning. Alex rushed to his apartment, tossing his laptop onto the table. He tapped furiously, overlaying satellite imagery with historical weather data, electromagnetic readings, even social patterns. The probe seemed to ignore humans in real-time chaos. It was watching deeper, waiting for reactions, cataloging logic. A flicker of movement drew Alex's attention. One of the probe's appendages extended toward the Atlantic, hovering just above a hurricane forming unexpectedly. Lightning arced from the probe to the storm, and the tempest stilled, the hurricane collapsing into a placid spiral. Cities in Florida that had been bracing for disaster found themselves bathed in sudden sunlight. Alex's pulse quickened. "It's not attacking," he whispered to himself. "It's observing, testing." The thought both exhilarated and terrified him. What if the probe wasn't just watching humans but their problem-solving, their ingenuity? If it was testing, humanity might not last decades of scrutiny. It might fail within days if it responded poorly. His mind raced. He imagined a cosmic chessboard, Earth's continents as pieces, and the probe moving unseen hands. Then, almost instinctively, he began plotting. Patterns emerged in the glyphs, a repeating sequence over the Pacific, mirrored in Europe, then Africa. It wasn't random scanning, it was systematic. There were rules. Alex realized something no one else had. While governments panicked, he could try to communicate, or at least anticipate the probe's logic. What if he treated the alien presence like a game, a puzzle designed to measure thought rather than strength? He leaned back in his chair, eyes glued to the shimmering probe in the sky. Humanity saw a threat, Alex saw a challenge, and for the first time, a flicker of hope ignited. Maybe one human could outthink an alien civilization that had expected decades to understand his species. The sky darkened again, though the sun had not moved, and the probe shifted, scanning new coordinates. The game had begun. Alex clenched his fists. The countdown had already started, and he intended to be ready. The next day, the world was gripped by a strange unease. Weather patterns bent unnaturally. Satellites flickered in orbit as if caught in invisible threads. People whispered of cities that seemed to shimmer, streets appearing wider or narrower depending on the angle, and rivers that twisted in impossible loops. No one understood what was happening, except Alex Mercer. He watched the probe from his apartment window, its dark metallic surface reflecting the rising sun. It had moved, deliberately, purposefully, hovering over the Sahara. As he observed, panels on its surface split and shifted like puzzle pieces, revealing floating holographic grids over deserts, forests, even oceans. Patterns, interlocking and precise, unfolded in the air. Alex's mind raced. These weren't random projections. They were simulations, layers of tests over the planet, interacting with the environment itself. The probe wasn't waiting for humans to act. It was forcing the world to respond. And it was waiting for the right solution. He pulled his laptop closer and overlaid satellite readings, climate data, and tectonic activity with the holographic grids. The symbols pulsed in sequences that hinted at cause and effect relationships. Alex realized the probe was running an enormous experiment, but one that could be solved if he could decipher its logic. The first simulation appeared to be a shifting desert pattern. Sand dunes rose and fell like waves, creating a labyrinth of impossible proportions, and within it, holographic glyphs blinked in a rhythmic sequence. To the probe, this was a test of reasoning, timing, and creativity. To Alex, it was the first puzzle. His pulse thumped as he reached for a digital stylus, overlaying the glyphs with lines connecting shapes, testing patterns. Hours passed unnoticed. Outside, the desert dunes, the holographic overlays, shifted unnervingly. News reports trickled in. Satellites detected sudden anomalies in the Sahara, unusual wind currents, and localized gravity shifts. No one connected these phenomena to the probe. They just panicked. Alex leaned back, sweat beading on his forehead. A path emerged, an elegant sequence of movements and connections that matched the glyph patterns exactly. He held his breath and executed the solution. The world changed. In the Sahara, the sand stilled, forming a massive geometric structure, perfectly aligned with the holographic projections. From orbit, the shape resembled a gigantic neural network, a glowing lattice of sand and light. Alex could feel it through the flicker in his instruments. The probe's sensors were tracking, analyzing, and acknowledging his success. And then the probe pulsed. A ripple of energy that expanded outward, touching Europe, Asia, and the Americas. In cities, lights flickered, screens blinked erratically, and people felt a strange shiver, as if reality itself had shifted for a moment. Alex realized the probe's simulations were global, interconnected, and escalating. Each solution didn't just satisfy one test, it influenced the next. One wrong move, and the world could experience catastrophic anomalies. He smiled grimly. While humanity panicked, he had understood the game's rules. The probe wasn't here to destroy, it was here to measure, and Alex Mercer had just scored the first point. But as he looked back at the hovering probe, a ripple of unease spread through him. The aliens were watching. They had noticed, and now, knowing that a human could solve their first puzzle, the real challenge would begin. Panic had set in. Governments scrambled armies and fleets, scrambling satellites and weapons to confront the hovering probe. Jets streaked across skies only to vanish in the alien light. Missiles fizzled harmlessly mid-air, dissolving into sparks of energy that left eerie trails. Cities went dark as power grids flickered under invisible forces, and the population was gripped by a fear they couldn't articulate. From his apartment, Alex watched the chaos unfold with grim fascination. He had predicted the probe wouldn't respond to aggression, and now the world was proving him right. Humanity's first instinct, force, was powerless. But the probe didn't retaliate. It simply adapted. Holographic grids appeared over Europe, shifting like tectonic plates. Cities bent and twisted, streets rearranging themselves, bridges looping impossibly into the sky. People screamed as reality seemed to glitch around them. The probe was testing again, but this time the simulations were directly tied to human reactions. Panic was the variable it wanted to measure. Alex leaned forward, eyes scanning the holographic sequences. Within the chaos, patterns emerged. The probe's logic wasn't random. It followed rules, predictable to anyone who could think beyond fear. And Alex, with his mind trained to see connections, understood it better than anyone. He focused on a sequence over New York City. Skyscrapers shimmered with faint energy as the probe overlaid a massive geometric puzzle across Manhattan. Streets looped into impossible angles, rivers surged against gravity, and holographic glyphs pulsed rhythmically above Central Park. Millions panicked, trapped in the shifting simulation. Alex mapped the glyphs to their real-world coordinates, predicting how the city would stabilize if he solved the pattern. With a few calculations, he sent digital signals through the city's infrastructure, traffic lights, power grids, and communication satellites, to manipulate the environment in sync with the probe's logic. And it worked. The city froze in perfect alignment, the streets straightened, rivers settled, and the skyscrapers shimmered into static brilliance. From orbit, the probe's sensors pulsed rapidly, scanning and recording. Humanity had failed to adapt, but one human had succeeded. Yet the victory came with a stark realization. The probe was escalating. It wasn't just running isolated simulations anymore. It was learning, evolving, adapting to human responses in real time. Every action, every choice, was being logged, analyzed, and countered. Alex realized the enormity of what he faced. The probe's tests weren't just puzzles, they were trials designed to stretch humanity to its limits. One misstep, and chaos could spread across continents. Unlike the world's armies and scientists, he had no time to argue, debate, or consult committees. He had to act and think faster than anyone else. As night fell, the probe shifted again, scanning the Pacific. Its surface shimmered with cascading glyphs, brighter, faster, more complex than before. The stakes had grown. This wasn't a test that could be solved with brute intelligence alone. It required instinct, creativity, and courage, the very qualities that defined humanity. Alex clenched his fists, his mind already running through patterns, possibilities, and contingencies. Humanity had stumbled, but he would not. One human could outthink the alien civilization in days, even as the world flailed in fear, and the probe, hovering silently above the ocean, seemed to pulse almost knowingly, as if acknowledging the challenge had begun in earnest. The Pacific shimmered like molten metal under the probe's watchful gaze. Alex sat on the edge of his rooftop, eyes locked on the hovering giant, his mind racing faster than the blinking glyphs that cascaded across its surface. For days, the world had panicked, misjudged, and stumbled. But now, he had a plan, a real one. The probe's latest simulation was unlike any before. A hurricane, massive and unnatural, had formed over the Pacific, spinning with alarming speed and radiating energy that disrupted satellites, planes, and communication lines. The glyphs above it pulsed violently, shifting patterns almost too fast for Alex to track. He understood immediately. This was no longer a test of deduction alone. It was a test of timing, precision, and courage. A single miscalculation could unleash the hurricane on coastal cities, and humanity would pay the price for their ignorance. Alex pulled up his custom simulation overlay on his laptop, combining meteorology, physics, and the alien patterns. Sweat dripped from his forehead as he calculated the sequence. Every glyph corresponded to a real-world reaction: wind currents, water pressure, electromagnetic pulses. To solve the puzzle, he would have to move the hurricane without touching it directly, to align its energy with the probe's shifting sequence. He hesitated for a fraction of a second. The risk was enormous. One wrong command could amplify the storm, but hesitation was the enemy. Alex typed the first sequence, sending waves of calculated signals into the grid of satellites and energy networks that intersected the hurricane. The sky responded. Clouds tore apart like paper, winds twisted into geometric spirals, and the hurricane's eye began to rotate in perfect alignment with the alien glyphs. The probe's surface pulsed brighter, the holographic grids cascading faster, as if it recognized the solution. Alex's heart pounded as he executed the final command. The storm collapsed in a controlled spin, energy dispersing harmlessly into the ocean. The swirling chaos had become art, a delicate, perfect balance that mirrored the probe's intricate design. For a moment, the world seemed to pause. Satellites stabilized, power grids hummed back to life, and cities far from the Pacific coast blinked as systems normalized. People looked to the skies in awe, sensing something monumental had occurred, though no one could comprehend exactly what. Alex leaned back, exhaling in relief, but he didn't have time to savor the moment. The probe shifted immediately, scanning Europe next, then Africa, then South America. Its holographic patterns multiplied, more complex and interwoven than ever before. He realized the truth. This was only the beginning. The probe had underestimated a human mind. Humanity had faltered under fear, but one human had not. And now the aliens would escalate. The next simulation would be faster, deadlier, and more unpredictable. Yet Alex felt something he hadn't in days: confidence. Humanity's resilience was not in armies, not in weapons, but in creativity, intuition, and the courage to face the impossible. He smiled grimly. If the probe expected decades to understand his species, it had not accounted for one human who could turn survival into a game. He tapped his laptop, overlaying a new set of calculations. The next sequence was already forming in the glyphs above the Atlantic, more complex than anything before. The world might not understand, might continue to panic, but Alex did, and he would be ready. Alex hadn't slept in 2 days. The victory over the Pacific hurricane had given him a brief surge of hope, But the probe had changed. Its surface glimmered with an intensity he hadn't seen before. The holographic grids pulsed faster, cascading symbols and sequences too complex for conventional logic. This was no longer a game of pattern recognition. It was a battle of wits, and the aliens were adapting. From his rooftop, Alex watched the sky twist. Over the Indian Ocean, water columns rose like towers of glass, spiraling into the clouds. Lightning arced in impossible geometries, striking the ocean in calculated intervals. The probe's glyphs hovered above the chaos, shifting constantly. Every second counted. This was the probe's retaliation, a test designed to overwhelm and intimidate. And humanity, still reeling from the hurricane, was unprepared. News reports described impossible storms, gravitational distortions, and sudden magnetic anomalies. People fled cities. Militaries scrambled jets and ships, but nothing could touch the alien intelligence orchestrating the chaos. Alex's mind raced. He overlaid his simulations, combining the probe's glyph sequences with real-time environmental data. The storm wasn't random. It was a massive algorithm, a challenge encoded into nature itself. Every shift in the hurricane's energy, every pulse of lightning, corresponded to a glyph pattern. To win, he had to predict and manipulate reality itself. He tapped into satellites, grids, and remote sensor networks, sending precise energy calibrations to align with the probe's sequences. His fingers flew over the controls, adjusting pressure systems, redirecting electromagnetic fields, even nudging ocean currents, all in perfect synchrony with the alien puzzle. Outside, the storm responded. Water columns bent and twisted into geometric spirals, lightning arced in perfect lattices, and the clouds folded like origami. The chaos of nature had become an elegant simulation, following Alex's human logic. The probe pulsed brightly, scanning, analyzing, recording. Then, the unexpected happened. A new layer of glyphs appeared, faster, denser, almost impossible to track. The probe had learned from Alex's strategy. It was no longer just a puzzle, it was a dynamic adversary, adapting in real time to his moves. Alex felt the first twinge of fear he had allowed himself in days. The stakes had skyrocketed. Every misstep could trigger catastrophic consequences across continents. He took a deep breath, centering himself. Fear was irrelevant. Clarity, creativity, and audacity were his weapons. He adjusted his approach. Instead of trying to predict the probe's next move, he forced a pattern, one it hadn't anticipated. By creating deliberate anomalies within the simulation, he manipulated the probe's logic, turning its own adaptive algorithm against itself. The storm froze mid-arc, lightning suspended in the air like frozen lasers, water columns balancing in perfect harmony. The probe pulsed, bright and rapid, then hovered silently. Alex held his breath. Across the globe, sensors reported stability. The storms dissipated, the skies cleared, and humanity's panic began to subside. For the first time, a human had not just survived the probe's challenge, he had outmaneuvered it. Alex leaned back, exhausted but exhilarated. The world would not understand what had just happened. The probe had underestimated a single human's ingenuity. Humanity had stumbled in fear, yet one mind had turned desperation into strategy, chaos into order. But Alex knew better than to celebrate. The probe had adapted once, and it would adapt again. The challenges ahead would be faster, deadlier, and more cunning. The probe didn't just escalate. It learned to manipulate more than reality. It began probing Alex personally. Holographic glyphs flickered inside his apartment, casting strange shadows across the walls. The symbols pulsed in synchronization with his heartbeat, almost as if the probe had found a way to measure not only his intellect, but his emotions. Then the first image appeared, a distorted hologram of his sister, trapped in a city caught in the probe's simulations. Panic surged through Alex, but he swallowed it. Fear was exactly what the probe wanted him to feel. He grabbed his laptop, running overlays of real-time satellite feeds and environmental data. The holographic cityscape flickered like a living nightmare, buildings bending, streets looping, rivers defying gravity. The probe had created a personal puzzle, using people and places he loved as stakes. Alex's mind raced. It wasn't enough to manipulate physics anymore. He had to anticipate a living, adaptive adversary capable of psychological warfare. The probe's glyphs shifted faster than ever, encoding solutions that demanded creativity under pressure. Every second counted. He drew on everything he had learned: patterns, sequences, instinct. Alex realized that the probe didn't understand human improvisation, the way people could combine logic with intuition in unpredictable ways. That was his edge. He began sending precise energy calibrations to the city, subtly shifting gravity, pressure, and electromagnetic fields to stabilize structures and guide people away from danger. Holographic glyphs pulsed in tandem with his movements, almost like a conversation, alien logic responding to human creativity. Then the probe introduced a twist. The holographic image of his sister began speaking, her voice glitching in and out, asking questions only Alex could answer. Each correct answer stabilized the environment slightly, while every hesitation intensified the chaos. The storm of glyphs, gravity distortions, and flickering buildings became a deadly test of intellect and courage. Alex clenched his jaw, forcing clarity over panic. He answered the first glyph question correctly. A section of the city stabilized. The second question arrived faster, the glyphs pulsing almost violently. His mind fired on all cylinders. He combined rapid reasoning with instinctual leaps, predicting patterns the probe hadn't accounted for. With each correct response, the holographic city solidified. Roads straightened, buildings snapped into alignment. People's movements became coherent. The probe's pulsing slowed, its first visible sign of uncertainty. Alex realized he was not just solving the puzzle, he was teaching it the limits of human ingenuity. Finally, the last glyph question appeared. It was a paradox, a sequence designed to force hesitation. Alex stared at it for a heartbeat, then ignored the expected solution entirely. He applied a radical human approach, combining lateral thinking, instinct, and audacity. The city stabilized completely. The holographic image of his sister flickered and vanished, leaving the probe hovering silently above. Alex slumped back, exhausted, but exhilarated. The probe had escalated to personal stakes, testing emotions and intellect simultaneously, and he had prevailed. Humanity's advantage wasn't in tools or weapons, it was in creativity, courage, and the unpredictable spark of life itself. The probe hovered over Earth like a predator surveying a stubborn prey. Its glyphs blazed with unrelenting intensity, cascading faster than Alex could track. He knew the aliens had realized something fundamental. One human mind could adapt, improvise, and defy expectations. And now, they were determined to break him, or at least push him to the edge. From space to the equator, storms erupted with impossible precision. Volcanoes, earthquakes, and lightning storms synchronized in a chaotic ballet, as if the planet itself had become the probe's puzzle board. Satellites trembled in orbit, power grids blinked, and people screamed at the sky in disbelief. Humanity had never faced anything like this. Alex sat on the edge of a rooftop, heart hammering, eyes scanning holographic glyphs cascading over the skyline. This wasn't just a puzzle anymore. It was a test of scale. Every action he took had to consider the planet's delicate balance. A single miscalculation could wipe out entire regions. He realized the probe wasn't simply creating challenges. It was analyzing every human response, building a predictive model of human strategy. But prediction had a flaw. It couldn't account for chaos. Humans thrived in improvisation. Humans thrived in the unpredictable. Alex tapped into global sensors, overlaying real-time data with his own simulations. He created a massive network of influence, redirecting tectonic tremors, stabilizing volcanic pressure, and synchronizing storms to dissipate harmlessly. Every adjustment rippled through the globe like a carefully orchestrated dance. Then he did the unthinkable. He initiated a feedback loop. Instead of simply responding to the probe, he forced it to react to him. Glyphs pulsed wildly, attempting to adapt, but Alex had anticipated their adaptive algorithms. He introduced paradoxes, impossible sequences, and lateral patterns, turning the probe's predictive modeling against itself. The storm clouds over the Atlantic formed a perfect geometric lattice. Volcanoes erupted in synchronized bursts that harmlessly created temporary islands, and lightning struck in controlled arcs, lighting up the sky like alien fireworks. Cities watched in awe as disasters turned into spectacle. Humans were alive, unscathed, and witnessing a phenomenon they couldn't comprehend. But Alex could. The probe pulsed violently, almost convulsing with the intensity of the feedback. For the first time, it paused, not in observation, but in uncertainty. Alex realized he had done what no human was meant to do. He had forced an alien intelligence to hesitate. With a final sequence, he applied a global stabilizing command. Glyphs shattered into patterns too fast to follow, then dissolved into calm light. Oceans were placid, skies cleared, and the planet itself seemed to exhale. The probe hovered silently, its massive frame reflecting a subdued, almost reverent glow. Alex fell back, exhausted, sweat and tears mingling. Humanity had survived, not through brute force, not through weapons, but through audacity, intellect, and ingenuity. The world below did not understand the scale of what had just occurred. The probe had underestimated humans, and one human had turned fear into strategy, chaos into art. He looked up at the probe one last time. It pulsed faintly, a silent acknowledgement. Perhaps recognition. Perhaps a warning. The game had changed. Humanity was no longer a passive observer. Humans could adapt, improvise, and innovate beyond any alien expectation. The sky above Earth was calm now, deceptively serene after days of chaos. But Alex knew the calm wasn't a surrender, it was a pause. The probe lingered, massive and silent, its reflective surface scanning every corner of the planet. Humanity had survived the ultimate challenge, but the aliens had not yet revealed their final verdict. News feeds erupted with reports of impossible phenomena, storms that had never happened, cities untouched by disaster, and landscapes reshaped but unharmed. People everywhere whispered rumors of a single human who had controlled the planet itself, turning death into spectacle. Alex stood atop a mountain, eyes fixed on the probe as it hovered over the horizon. He had anticipated one final challenge, one last test of intellect and courage, but nothing prepared him for what came next. The probe pulsed, and for the first time, a transmission emerged. Not in words, but in light. Holographic glyphs formed symbols that reached across the sky, patterns impossible for any one mind to fully decode. Yet Alex understood instinctively. This was an invitation, an acknowledgement. The aliens wanted him to play, not for destruction, but for collaboration. A thought struck him. They had underestimated humanity because they assumed logic alone defined intelligence. They hadn't counted on imagination, improvisation, or audacity, the very traits that made humans dangerous in ways they could not predict. Alex realized he wasn't just a player anymore. He was a representative, showing the galaxy that humans were a species unlike any other. He manipulated the glyphs, crafting sequences that echoed human creativity, logic, and unpredictability. The probe responded instantly, cascading symbols that twisted, merged, and evolved in ways that seemed almost alive. Humanity was now part of the game, not a threat to the probe, but a participant in an interstellar dialogue of intellect. Across the world, people watched in awe as the sky flickered with alien patterns, synchronized with natural phenomena in perfect harmony. Storms danced in controlled arcs, auroras painted the night sky, and tectonic shifts became a mesmerizing ballet. Humans could only gape, unaware that one mind had turned the impossible into spectacle and shown that Earth was not a planet to be conquered, but a species to be reckoned with. The probe pulsed one final time and retreated, dissolving into the void of space. Yet its presence lingered, a silent acknowledgement of humanity's resilience. The game was over, for now. But the universe had witnessed something unprecedented. A single human mind had turned decades of alien preparation into a testament of ingenuity, courage, and audacity. Alex looked down at the planet he had saved, feeling the weight of what had transpired. Humanity had survived, not through superior technology or firepower, but through creativity, unpredictability, and sheer will. One human had not only survived the aliens' ultimate challenge, but had redefined humanity in their eyes. The world slowly returned to normal, or at least a new normal. Humans would rebuild, learn, and wonder at the events that had unfolded. And somewhere in the cosmos, an alien intelligence had been forced to update its assumptions, finally understanding that humans were not to be measured by conventional logic. They were something else entirely.